A remote edition of Jets Final Drive coming your way after another Jets victory because that's all they do lately. Well, they do it more than they lose, at least in the last five. The Jets have won 3 of their last 5. He is Zack Rosenblatt. I am Connor Hughes. The Jets taking down the Falcons yesterday, 27-24, behind the heroics of folk hero Nick Folk, the 56-yarder, which just crept into the left corner of the goalpost on, I'm gonna say southeast end zone, Zach, but I'm completely and totally making that up because I have absolutely no idea what direction that was. I just know from the press box, it's your left side, going right to left on your radio dial to take me back to when I used to call games for RCBC's Z88.9. Zach, buddy, how are you? Another victory pod, right? Victory Monday.
I mean, I'm doing better than you. I didn't have to drive to Boston immediately after the game, but yeah, you and I joke about this all the time, but it's just so much. The locker room and covering these games, and I know the games don't actually matter at this point of the season, so it's a little different. But like covering a winning locker room it's just like so much better. And and again, this is a weird season, so even the losing locker rooms haven't been the same as they normally would be because I think everybody's just accepted that the games don't actually matter here. But yeah, I don't know. It was good to see a win. And they did it in like a normal football team way instead of like stumbling into it. So you got to respect that.
Ish. They gained the lead. They lost the lead, tied it, lost it, tied it, lost it, tied it, lost it, and then eventually won the game. You're definitely doing a little bit better than me. I will say that everybody and their uncle, that goes for Janae Coakley, Jordan Rodon, Andy Vasquez, everyone I talked to, Daryl Slater, they all basically made me seem like I was a psychotic freak to think about driving from East Rutherford to Providence, Rhode Island here to crash for the night before now heading up to Foxborough for the Giants Monday night game against the Patriots. The traffic actually was not that bad. I think it took me about 3 hours and 45 minutes, maybe 4 hours. And it was probably only closer to 4 hours because I'm an idiot and I made a wrong turn as I got off the George Washington trying to go. Like I was supposed to veer right, I veered left, and then there was an accident, and it definitely added like 10 extra minutes. But it was pretty cool. I got here probably around, I want to say 9-ish, 9:40. Stopped, met up with Jordan, had a steak, and I'm feeling good. So let's get into this game, though, Zach, because I don't think that anybody listening to the show gives a you-know-what about my travel to Providence to watch Jackson Dart take on the Patriots, although you should still read all of my content there to keep me employed by SMY. This is the first segment of every single show. It's our favorite segment of every single show because it is brought to you by the greatest university in all of the land, that is Monmouth. Zach, I'll let you go first. What did you learn from the Jets' victory over the Atlanta Falcons?
Yeah, it's kind of building on what I think I said in my What We Learned section last week, which is I think Aaron Glenn is kind of just pushing all the right buttons right now as a motivator and even in-game. But like he kind of downplayed this win a little bit, which if for people who have covered the Jets, like a lot of times they win these games and they act like they've arrived or that they won the Super Bowl. And he kind of was like, yes, it's great that we won, but like we're still building something. Like I'm more focused on the future. And then today he was like, we're still a long way to go. Like he didn't come out here and declare like we're back, we're living out my vision. He said, this is a stepping stone and like this is a good thing that we're winning. We're always trying to win. But at the end of the day, like we still have a long way to go. And he's absolutely right. Like that was a bad Falcons team they beat. They still don't have their quarterback. So like that's the big question. Like they have a lot of things to do roster wise and you need to decide what you want to do with some of the defensive stuff, coaching and personnel. But like they've shown signs of progress. They fight. Like there's no doubt about it. Like it's a cliche when you are losing and saying we fight, but when you close out a game like that, which was a game the Jets usually lose, like it's Aaron Glenn, I think is just doing a really good job now. And I think, you and I talked like a few weeks ago where I like the halfway point. I think it would have been fair to criticize and question him, but it was too early to like completely give up. And I wanted to see how he did the second half of the season. And so far, I think he's been doing a really good job.
I agree with you. My what have I learned, and I'm going to go to the sentimental route because I'm a loving, heart-filled person, even though people like to think I'm heartless and only like the negativity. I learned that I felt really good that Nick Folk was able to have that moment. We talk about like the greatest kickers in the NFL and the greatest kickers of a generation. I don't think Nick Folk is that, but he's been a staple in the NFL basically for the last 2 decades or so. You know what I mean? He was with the Cowboys, he was with the Jets, then kind of entered into that end of your career back nine stage where you're kind of everyone's stopgap filler and you're a year here, year there. Did have a nice little renaissance with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but I think to have Nick Folk have that moment was really cool, because we all know that his leg, even though he's made a 58-yarder and a 56-yarder, I mean, there's not that much left in his leg. You don't know how many more years he's going to have left, even though I know Aaron Glenn said he's got years and years and years. I think you're probably looking at maybe 1 or 2 left for Nick Folk. So you don't know how many more game-winning opportunities he's going to have. And to be able to do that at the place that really, really got his career right on track after he left the Cowboys, and to have the game-winning moment, and to be able to celebrate with his teammates and then celebrate with his family, for a guy that's probably on the final few holes, well, as Aaron Rodgers used to say, like, it's not only about being on the back nine. You're walking up the 18th fairway, looking at the bar on the 19th hole. I mean, that's kind of what Nick Folk's doing at this point. For him to be able to have that in such a dramatic fashion, that it wasn't just some little rinky-dink 20-yard field goal that won it, to be able to sneak it in there, give it everything you've got, and have that on your resume, I think that was a really cool moment.
And selfishly, he's the only University of Arizona alum in that locker room right now. So me and him were bonding before he was waiting for his press conference, and we talked for like 5-10 minutes about Arizona getting 9 wins, bear down. They're going to head to like a good bowl game. We were talking all about the Wildcats, and he's also just like a good dude. So it's cool to see him still lasting this long. And Aaron Glenn alluded to them being teammates, and I didn't realize that they actually were. It was like a brief thing in the summer of Aaron Glenn's last season with the Cowboys. Yeah, it was Nick Folk's first season with them, and then Aaron Glenn got cut at the end of training camp, so they didn't actually play a season together, but they were teammates for a summer. So that tells you how long Nick Folk has been in it, that his head coach, who was like 50-something, was a teammate with him way back when.
Crazy. All right, Zach, let's get into this one. Why don't we do that? Like we said, Jets have improved their record to 3-9 on the season. We'll get to talk about the NFL draft a little bit later on in the show, but we do want to talk about this game specifically, because I'm coming around to the moment and the belief that these can be important games. That you don't have to lose everything, and maybe that's because also covering the Giants, you see where they got Jackson Dart, you see where all these other great quarterbacks around the NFL are found, not necessarily picks 1, 2, or 3. But I still think that games matter. But the biggest takeaway I think I had from this game is that the Jets are going to have to win games ugly, because they're simply not good enough to just beat teams outright. But it almost reminds me of a team that's so young that they almost don't know what they're supposed to know in terms of how everybody else views this team. There was some problems with the Jets over the last couple of years towards the end of the Robert Saleh tenure, really after Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson won their Rookie of the Year awards, where the Jets started to really drink their own Kool-Aid and believe that they were a little bit better than what they were. And I think that they took games, and they went into games, the Jets did the last couple of seasons, expecting to win just because of the names that were on the back of the jersey. And the result instead was just losses and losses and losses and losses, and never anything that resembled a consistent winner. Now you have the reverse of it, where this Jets team, the Falcons are bad. The Falcons are still a more talented team than the New York Jets. In fact, the Bengals are a more talented team than New York Jets, and I think the Browns are a more talented team than New York Jets. But it doesn't matter, because the Jets don't know what they don't know. So you have a bunch of these kids and a bunch of these guys who are cast-offs like Mechie and like Mitchell, just going into these games, motivated by Aaron Glenn, like you talked about in the opener here, Zach, and just going 100 miles per hour every single play. And they take shots in the face and they fall behind, but it doesn't matter, because they never stop fighting. They just keep going and going and going and going. And I do believe that those lessons and those attributes and that foundation that you can build, even though probably a number of the players that are on the field right now for the Jets are not going to be members of this team when they do eventually turn it around, I think the culture and the infrastructure that you can build in these wins are something that Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji, their tenure, can carry through when they add another rookie class, when they add in some more veterans, when they sign more free agents, when those players come into a culture that is now starting to figure out how to win. I think that can be monumental for a team that does believe someday we'll be talking about them being in contention after Thanksgiving, not refreshing Tankathon after every 1 and 4 o'clock game.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it, because I think with the Saleh era in particular, I think they went into each game and each season being like, we're more talented than everybody else, but they did not establish the culture. Like, you could say that Saleh maybe was a better coach in retrospect or whatever, but I do not think he was great at establishing the culture and like a good foundation to where they could overcome things like Aaron Rodgers tearing his Achilles in week one. It was a team that kind of folded in the face of adversity constantly, and that was because they didn't really have a good foundation. So I don't think momentum carries from season to season. Like I think that's often a misnomer, and I know you obviously covered that Adam Gase year where they finished 7-9 after starting whatever they started.
That was so fake though.
It was. But
fake.
That's the only example. Like the Giants in 2020, they finished 6-10. And you would think that Joe Judge was the second coming of Vince Lombardi based on the way we're talking about him. And so they're like, okay, we have all this momentum at the end of the season. We're going to carry it into next year. Well, that does not happen. You know, all of a sudden your roster changes a bunch. You hit training camp, guys get hurt, all these things, and then you have to weather that storm. And so that's why with my opening point about Aaron Glenn, that's why I think he's doing a really good job of like keeping the focus where it is, the whole cliche of keeping the main thing. And like that's how you establish a very baseline to where you can plug guys into this culture you already have, and then you start winning, as opposed to like trying to get the guys and then figure out the culture after the fact. Like they're doing it the right way. Whether it works out at the end of the day, if they don't get a quarterback, it's not going to work. Like that's if we've learned anything covering the NFL, it's if you don't have the quarterback, you can have the best culture in the world, it's going to fail. And if you have a great quarterback and a bad culture, you can kind of still get away with it. But like this is the right way to go about it for an organization that is not good culture for a very long time.
Yeah, and I don't think I don't think this is an insulting thing to say. I don't think the Jets are very good. Like from a talent perspective, that's why when they traded away Quinnen and they traded away Sausack, they did enter into this rebuild where they were saying, let's get all the draft picks. We really need to rework this roster, and that's because they didn't believe the roster was very good. It was either players who were not meeting expectations, players who maybe had an inflated value or were overrated in some senses, and they realized Darren Muji did and Aaron Glenn, and can kudos to Woody Johnson for giving them the leeway to be able to do this. But it was clear that they needed more than what they had in order to be a contender, and they needed to tear this thing down in order to build it back up. But the result is you still have to play games, and the guys that are out there, while they aren't necessarily as talented as the people on the other side, they're fighters, and they're scrappy. And I think that's the difference between the Adam Gase team that went 7-9 and even Joe Judge's Giants, like you were talking about, the one 6-10, is that this is a team that no one looks at the Jets roster right now and says like, oh my God, this player is going to be a star, or this guy's a leader, this guy is great. They just see a team that's scrappy and feisty and are just never going to be kicked down. And I think those are the lessons you can take forward. It's not about like, I remember the Jets were, you mentioned that year with Adam Gase, they were beating up on teams that were just terrible. And then they weren't even really beating up on them, but they were just winning ugly games against bad teams. This Jets team, maybe it's selective perception, but to me, it feels different because of how they're winning. It's just, there are moments, and Zach, I remember you and I wasn't at the Bengal game when the Jets beat Cincinnati, but you and I were texting during that game when I was covering the Giants and just saying to each other like, oh, here's where the route starts. Oh, here's where the blowout starts. Oh, here's where they're going to lose by 40-0. But they just don't die. And it was the same thing here against Atlanta, where the Jets gained that 7-0 lead off of the ridiculous special teams plays that they seem to make play after play after play, where Stiggers recovered it at the 2-yard line. Breece Hall scores. They're up 7-0. But then Atlanta ties the game at 7-7. Then Atlanta gets the 14-7 lead. And I know I'm sitting there in the press box next to Janae like, okay, here we go. Like Bijan Robinson just scored from 5 yards out. It's over. Like this is it. They're down 14-7. It's going to be 21-7. It's going to be 28-7. Maybe they get something late, but it's over. That wasn't the case, though. Suddenly it's 14-14. Then the Falcons take a 17-14 lead. Then it's 17-17. Then the Falcons go up 24-17. Then the Jets tie at 24-24. And then eventually they fight and they scrap and they kick the game-winning field goal. Those ways you are winning, that's what I talk about culture. That's where I talk about like the fight. That I think can carry over. I'm not a big fan of like, oh, you won 6 of your last 7 games. You're definitely going to start next season 5-0. Like I don't believe that at all. But I believe there are tendencies that you can develop that you can carry forward. And that's what the Jets haven't had. They were a losing team filled with a bunch of losing players the last couple of years. And you guys know, I love Robert Saleh. I loved so many of the coaches that were here. I love Joe Douglas. But there was just something missing from the organization the last couple of years where when they fell behind, you immediately thought, here comes the route. When they were up, you were like, they're going to find a way to blow it. Now you're kind of hanging on to every third quarter and every fourth quarter where as long as the Jets find themselves in the game, you kind of are getting the feeling these last 5 games like they're going to find a way to pull it out, or at least they're going to make it interesting, or at least they're going to have a chance to win the game. And then once you infuse this roster with more talent, that's when they can really start flipping some games against the premier competition. Again, the Patriots are an immensely better team than the Jets. The Jets were still in that game. The Falcons, not as much better than the Jets, but the Jets win that game. And I think that's very promising for the future and something you can legitimately hang your hat on. And that's a testament to Aaron Glenn. We've ripped him. The guy's driving me nuts at times with how he's talked to the media. I've hated it. But you got to give him credit for the way that he's motivating these guys. And maybe it truly was just about getting his dudes. And Quinnen probably wasn't his guy. Sauce probably wasn't his guy. Now he's getting his guys in there, and you're starting to see the vision of what they want this team to look like. And you can let yourself believe what it'll look like once they really get some players.
I mean, beyond the fighting thing, like the best thing you can say is it feels like there's legit buy-in in that locker room. Even a guy like Breece Hall, like he's heading into his contract year. There was a feeling that maybe he wanted to get traded at the deadline, and he seems to be pretty happy with this coaching staff, or he seems to believe in them at least based on what he's like tweeting and some of the things he's saying, and he kind of like. Yesterday, he kind of downplayed the way they played this game because, I asked him about the field goal, and he's like, our offensive operation wasn't good enough at the end of the game. I felt like we failed Tyrod Taylor. So, like, guys, doing that after a win is unique. Like, we haven't really seen that around here. There were times we didn't see that after losses where guys would downplay their role in a mistake or whatever it was. And, to your point, like, yeah, he needs to get his guys in here. Like, maybe a lot of these guys aren't going to be starters on this team 2 years from now, but you're building a foundation, and you're going to start bringing in the right guys. You're going to start bringing in the talented players, that's what, like I said, like at the halfway point of the season, if you were grading the first half of the year, you could have given Aaron Glenn a bad grade, but he's improved. It's a 17-game schedule, and at the end of the season, if we feel better about him than we did at the beginning, then you're going to feel good about the Jets going into next year.
Yeah, and I even go back, like I remember Robert's first year felt different. Like the Jets were bad that season, but you look at the end of games, like when they got beat up by the Bills 27-10 and Wilson was looking bad, and like the 30-9 loss to the Saints, the Eagles beating the crap out of them. Like, I don't know, it feels a little different. Maybe that's just me sitting here being like, I'm so tired of covering losing football. I mean, literally, I cover 2 teams in the NFL. The one is 3-9, the other one's 2-10. So I mean, it is like the losing takes a toll where you're just kind of trying to look for anything to hang your hat on to like be like, there we go, like we got this, but. Just to have some kind of joy in covering winning football, but we'll see. Appreciate everyone. I appreciate everyone wherever they are watching. I'm going to get that line one of these times right off the bat. Today is not that day, though. I'm going to blame sleep deprivation. Appreciate you guys everywhere you are watching. If that is X, which we broadcast this show pretty routinely on, you guys absolutely rock. If that is sny.tv, you rock a ton as well. But we always say the place to be is on YouTube, because while you are interacting or while you are watching the show on YouTube, on SNY's YouTube channel, you can interact with us throughout the entire duration of the show. We have the live comment section running. Brian Pincus, our producer for this episode, is monitoring that comment section. He's going to let me know if you guys have anything interesting to say, questions, comments, concerns, things of that nature. And then Zach and I will touch on them throughout the duration of the show. If we don't answer it or talk about it organically, I will make sure that I get to those questions throughout this one. Also, while you are there, like I said, subscribe to SMY's channel, because aside from all of our Jets content, Jets Final Drive, Jets Mailbag, Jets Pre- and Post-Game Live, you also get Ian Begley's The Putback. How about the second place in the Eastern Conference? New York Knicks rolling. The Pacers are shot. The Celtics are shot. I really think the Knicks have a chance to take this one to the NBA Finals, and who knows what happens once you get there. You can hear Ian tell me why I'm wrong, or maybe fan the flames a little bit there on The Putback. And we obviously have a ton of other digital content as well from SMY, so make sure you subscribe to that channel. All right, moving on. Quarterbacks. Zach, Tyrod Taylor, I thought he was fine. I know Steve Serby of the New York Post and Glenn got into it jokingly, like it was good humored after the game about, oh my God, Tyrod Taylor can still run, and Glenn was like, what do you mean he can still run? And Serby was like, well, he's 36, and Glenn's like, you can't run when you're 36, but still, I thought this was your typical Tyrod Taylor game. 19 of 33, 172 yards, 44 touchdowns. Had 2 touchdowns total, 1 passing, the gorgeous one to A.D. Mitchell, the 52-yard strike, and then a really nice run as well for the score to tie the game at 24-24. His scamper on the final drive that actually set up Nick Folk's game winner, really impressive there, the 14-yarder around the right sideline. So I think you're seeing some pretty decent things from Tyrod Taylor right now, Zach. At least what you expect. Again, you don't think this guy's a star. He's not a starting quarterback in the NFL. You don't want to see him for 18 weeks. But he is the perfect backup quarterback, in my opinion, when he's on the field.
Yeah. I mean, I think about the bomb he had to A.D. Mitchell, and we'll get into that when we get into A.D. for sure. But I only point to that to say, like, Justin Fields is not making that throw. He's not even attempting that throw. And that's why I couldn't help but think, like, obviously this is a complicated, like, what if, because you never know if Tyrod's going to stay healthy. But I can't help but wonder if they win a couple more games if Tyrod is the starter sooner in the season, just because the whole point of right now, obviously, is, as we've said over and over, is to evaluate. And you're able to evaluate because Tyrod Taylor is both willing and able to make most of the throws. He's able to run the offense more efficiently than, I mean, maybe not efficient isn't the right word because I don't know if he's the most efficient quarterback, but he's going to compete. He's going to throw. He's not going to be afraid to throw it. Like the guy he got like hit pretty hard the play before that bomb. And in Breece Hall was like, I was kind of worried we weren't going to be able to get the next playoff because it involved like two different motions. And so I'm like, we need to get the line before like the 20-second mark. And so I tell the guys just to line up, and they wound up not doing the motion. The next thing you know, he's bombing it to A.D. Mitchell. And so, he's the exact kind of quarterback you need kind of where the Jets are at right now. As we talked about, like establishing a culture, like this guy is going to compete his ass off no matter what. Like I said, he was getting banged up. He's older. He scrambled for a touchdown. He kind of willed the team, the offense, in a lot of ways. A group that, like, you have a couple receivers who don't even know the plays necessarily because they were just acquired a few weeks ago. You have an offensive line who has some really good moments, but also was like, had some really ill-timed false starts. And he's just a leader that everybody looks to. Everybody really loves him. And, we can get into what the future is at backup quarterback and with him and all that stuff. But I'm impressed with him just in terms of like his ability to just be a professional quarterback, and that's something they've been missing this year. And maybe they were not going to win a lot of games, but I think having him at quarterback, you feel a lot better about the development of the guys around him than you do with like Fields, obviously.
Well, what's fascinating, Zach, is the Jets are going to draft a quarterback this year. And I think it might have been Tony Vegas that I saw on Twitter throw this one out, my boy TV. It was the picture that either you or I posted of the stands that were just a ghost town yesterday. It was crazy. I mean, it was miserable weather, a bad team. Falcon fans aren't traveling because they stink too. Like, no one was going to be there. But I think it was TV that said something like, oh, yeah, the Jets are definitely drafting a quarterback this offseason, because it makes sense. Like, that's how you energize it. You need a quarterback. And I don't know if that's going to be Simpson, Mendoza, Moore if he comes out, or somebody else that we're not really talking about yet, like that emerges from the college football playoffs. I don't know, but I definitely think the Jets are going to end up drafting someone. However, they're going to pair that person with a veteran. And when we were going into this one, I was fascinated at the idea of Kirk Cousins being that veteran mentor for whatever quarterback the Jets draft in the first round by trading up or by drafting him organically or however things fall in place in April. I didn't know if it would actually happen because of the background with Cousins and the Jets and some of the back and forth where Cousins was coming here, the documentary that he put out where he basically said the Jets paid him more money and he was still going to the Vikings. I know that rubbed Mike McCagnon and ownership way the wrong way, so I don't even know if it ever would have happened, but he was a very intriguing option. And maybe that's because I still had Minnesota Vikings quarterback Kirk Cousins in my head, and last year with the Atlanta Falcons, when he looked so bad, it was just because he was coming off of that Achilles tear, and now he's back to being Kirk Cousins again, or at the very minimum, still a really serviceable quarterback. I have no feeling whatsoever or thought whatsoever that Kirk Cousins is a serviceable quarterback in the NFL. And I know the statistics weren't that bad, Zach, 21 to 33, 234 yards and a touchdown. But if they weren't giving the ball to Bijan Robinson and letting Bijan Robinson go crazy, it felt like the Falcons were basically just 3 plays away from punting. Like, that's how it worked. If it wasn't Bijan Robinson doing amazing things, the offense was completely and totally shot. They had nothing without Drake London throwing the ball. Kirk Cousins can't move anymore. His arm looks dead, and the inaccuracies are crazy. So I came away from this one saying, dear God, do not let me sit through any more Kirk Cousins football. And please, Jets, do not sign Kirk Cousins in the offseason. I like the idea of Marcus Mariota better. I like the idea of Gardner Minshew better. I also, and I'm curious your take on this, am warming up to the idea more than I ever thought I would that Tyrod Taylor with a rookie quarterback makes some sense. And, you know, when the Jets signed Justin Fields, Zach, I texted a general manager just to kind of get an idea of what Fields was capable of, what he thought of Fields from his evaluation. And he straight up told me, Connor, the best quarterback on that team is still Tyrod Taylor. And he said that throughout OTAs. He said that throughout minicamp. He said that when I checked in training camp and after the preseason. And even after the opener against the Pittsburgh Steelers, he said, just wait, I'm telling you, Tyrod Taylor is still the best quarterback on the Jets roster. And again, he's limited. He's not an elite player. He's not going to flip games in your favor. But what he does well, and he showed he can still be a serviceable option out there under center. So I genuinely do not hate the idea of having Tyrod Taylor, if he wants to come back, and a rookie with the Jets next year. I genuinely do like that.
I mean, Tyrod, as you've talked about in the past, he's kind of like the perfect bridge veteran quarterback because he's like good enough to be your starter at the beginning of the season if you want to do that. But he's also not so good that he's going to, you know, blow the top off to where, like, if you bench him for the rookie in week 4, everybody's going to lose their mind. Like, he's like, and he's not going to cause a ruckus. He's not going to demand a trade or a release. So
guys love him.
Guys love him, and he's a good mentor for a young guy. So I'd be very open to it. Like you said, there are some interesting guys like a Marcus Mariota, who I think is also similarly like a really good teammate. There's a few others that are going to hit free agency that are notable. But, you know, if you're drafting like a Mendoza or a Simpson or a Dante Moore, whoever's available, or if they trade up, like I do think Tyrod's a good complementary guy to that, and so I'm open to it. By the way, you mentioned Fields, and we haven't talked about it since Fields talked to the media for the first time. Joe Caporoso actually called this the second like reluctance game because Fields kind of basically said like that they like talked to him about being like a wildcat quarterback option, which I think he could survive in the NFL a lot longer if he's willing to just be like a Taysom Hill type the rest of the way. He did not make it sound like he's willing to do that. He said he doesn't like it because he goes in and he risks like hamstring injuries or whatever, and he dealt with that in Pittsburgh, and he's not so sure he wants to do that. And I
he's
get
getting paid a lot of money.
The idea of it. Yeah, I get the idea of it, but like, don't say that out loud, man. And I don't think that's a great look. They didn't use him as a wildcat. I don't know if I imagine there wasn't any refusal or anything, but that was surprising to me to hear that, to be honest.
I'm not unsurprised by it because I know how Justin Fields views himself as I'm a quarterback.
True.
And
That's
he doesn't
fair.
think he should have been, he doesn't think he should have been benched. He thinks he was unfairly benched, like all that stuff internally. Like, that he thinks he should still be this team's starter. Not his fault. We got to do what I know that. Like, again, he takes blame, but still doesn't think he doesn't think he should have lost his job. So it's not surprising. At the same time, and throwing him out there to run quarterback sneaks and know he's going to take a beating when he's already been pretty bruised and battered this year. Like, I get why he's reluctant to do it, but you're still getting paid a lot of money from this team. You know what I mean? Like that when my boss tells me, like when Amara tells me she wants me to write a column, I can't turn around and be like, yeah, I don't feel like doing that today. You know what I mean? Like
my hand might get sore and I don't want to, typing.
It's a different situation there for him. But the one thing I will say, and this real quick before we move on, the one underlying note with Tyrod Taylor is that, as you said, Zach, he's so loved across the NFL, and everybody across the NFL views him as that perfect bridge quarterback. One of the reasons why he signed with the Jets last year was because he didn't want to be that stopgap veteran mentor. He actually signed with the Jets in part because he wanted to play with Aaron Rodgers. I'm not saying Aaron Rodgers was this lightning rod attracting free agents to come to the Jets, but Tyrod looked at this as like, yeah, I'll go be the backup behind a veteran. I don't have to worry about teaching. I don't have to worry about being this veteran guy. Like, he's the starter. I'm the backup. Like, he actually enjoyed the fact he was behind a solidified starting quarterback. Now, if he's going to have a chance to play, maybe I don't know. But after what he did with the Giants, with Daniel Jones, and were they going to draft somebody, like, it was kind of a different world. But I think he wanted, I know he didn't necessarily love the idea of being like that veteran to the rookie. So we'll see. Maybe it changed a little bit. Maybe he likes the Jets and likes the coaching staff and he wants to stay. And certainly, like I said, I think he's playing himself into a position where you want to have him back next year. I think so, at least.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if the Jets are interested in bringing him back. It seems like Aaron Glenn likes him quite a bit. So there's worse things you can have than Tyrod Taylor in your room at the end of the day.
100%. Absolutely. Moving on a little bit here, Zach, we are going to go to some evaluations for 2026. You want to do that?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So the first one, and it was, again, I'm going to stick with my feel-good thing. when the Jets traded for A.D. Mitchell, or when they got A.D. Mitchell in the Sauce Gardner trade, I had heard some very mixed things about him in terms of maturity. That he was a guy that the Colts couldn't wait to get rid of, that there's a reason why he wasn't going to play, that there was some self-inflation of what he should be doing and what he shouldn't be doing, and almost comparing it to when Malachi Corley threw the ball behind the end zone for the Jets, and then when we finally talked to him, he was basically like, yeah, I've never, like, why are you guys making a big deal out of this? I've never done this before. Like, obviously I'll never do it again. Like, players do this before. Like, Deshaun Jackson did it. Like, he just absolutely no remorse for it, no care in the world that he did it. Like, very, very cavalier about a pretty egregious mistake. From the people that I talked to, that was my preconceived notion of what it was going to be like when A.D. Mitchell got here, that was the player the Jets were getting. It's early, but I think that couldn't be further from the truth. This guy has been grinding on and off the field with the Jets, doing everything he can to get on the same page as his quarterbacks, doing everything he can to take make the most of his opportunities. And you kind of saw it all come to fruition here against the Falcons with career-high 12 targets, career-high 8 catches, career-high 102 yards, and the first touchdown of his career on that 52-yard bomb. But it was what he said in the post-game that stood out most to me, Zach, and it was, when the ball's in the air, what are you thinking about? As you came close to a touchdown against the Jets a year ago, you were stopped at the 1, you fumbled before the goal line with the Colts. What are you thinking about when you have like this 52-yarder? And all he said was finish. That's what was in his mind. That to me shows a player who is maturing. That to me shows a player that might be turning the corner. And that to me shows somebody that you can start to buy in on as a piece to the future for the Jets. Again, I still view this one, and we're going to get to this with Mechie, I still view it as you don't want A.D. Mitchell as your wide receiver 2. You probably don't even really want him as your wide receiver 3. You love him as a wide receiver 4. But I'm very encouraged more than ever before, both because of the person and the player and how they are now marrying into on-field production.
Yeah, I think the most notable thing about him and Mechie is that, number one, these guys like still don't even know the full playbook. Like Brees said that like there's times where they like kind of have to ask where to be, and they're still adjusting. And there's stories about John Mechie getting to the facility at like 6 a.m. and catching from the jugs machine, and A.D. Mitchell is staying after practice and catching from it. And I think Tyrod told this story. I don't think he told it at the podium. He might have told it to maybe Janae or maybe like the broadcast or something. But I guess he said that they like those 2 young receivers have been staying after practice and after meetings with him to learn. And I think that's encouraging. What I will say is about what your point about, the way he responded when he was in Indy. I think the difference there and here is that he's getting opportunity here that was not available to him there, and where he wasn't going to be able to work through his struggles in Indy because they're trying to win, whereas the Jets are going to let him work through his struggles here, and he knows that. And so there's something to be said about giving him that backwind of confidence that, okay, I can make a mistake and they're not just going to bench me and all of a sudden I'm going to be 5th on the depth chart and I'm barely going to be seeing the field. If I make a mistake, I could bounce back from it. Like he did a couple weeks ago. He dropped a couple passes. He comes back the next week. He's getting open. He's making catches. This week has a career performance. And yeah, to your point, like I think sometimes fans and some media like jumps on a performance like this and says like, okay, well they might have their number 2 receiver next year. To your point, I think you go into next season saying, okay, we can lock him into a role in the wide receiver room, whether it's 2, 3, 4, we find that out in training camp. But you bring him back, okay, we have a talented guy, we have Garrett Wilson, we fill out the rest of the room with a free agent, with a high draft pick, then all of a sudden we have 4 interchangeable pieces that are really talented. That's how I would approach it. I wouldn't approach it saying, okay, we have a locked-in number 3 receiver in A.D. Mitchell, because I don't think you can do that. And we need to see in the coming weeks, now that we know he's their number 1 receiver right now, like you look at the target share and the snaps, he's like their number 1 receiver. How is he going to handle it as defenses start to scheme to stop him? Like he's never had that in his NFL career. So I think we still need to see this on a consistent basis, but I was highly, highly encouraged because over 3 weeks, even when he wasn't getting the ball, he was getting open. And that's the best skill you can have as a wide receiver at the end of the day. And if they build on that and they have something here, then that's, another really, really good addition by Darren Muji.
Yeah, the one thing that I would encourage all fans to try to do, and it's hard because you love this team, you naturally inflate the players that are on it. You naturally have a heightened sense of who they are. I still compare this, and I've written it, I've said it. It's like when you have a really bad basketball team, there's still somebody on that team averaging 20 points a game because somebody has to score. No basketball team is going to score 40 points a game. Everyone's going to be around 80, 90, 100. So somebody's going to be getting those points. So you kind of have to really look into it. A.D. Mitchell as a wide receiver 2 or a wide receiver 1, I don't think is it. You can probably survive with him as a wide receiver 3, but I still personally love the idea of draft a guy in the second round for to add to the table. Sign somebody like although he's dealing with all this crap now where apparently he's talking, that my Jennings takes may be changing, but somebody in the tier of him or Jacoby Myers, get yourself Garrett Wilson back and healthy next year. And now you have veteran free agent pickup, rookie second round pick with a lot of promise, Garrett Wilson, A.D. Mitchell, and then John Mechie, who had 4 for 19 yesterday and a bad drop that probably was going to be a touchdown and another one that should have been a catch earlier in the game as well. Those guys fighting for your wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 spot. Zach, we went into this season saying the Jets receiving unit totality might have been one of the worst groupings in the entire NFL. You can, in the span of 1 year, transition it into a legitimate strength of this team, because then you loop in Mason Taylor, who keeps getting better, 2 catches, 21 yards for him yesterday. You have A.D. Mitchell who's starting to flash, John Mechie who's shown some promise, rookie. I mean, there's a lot there that Tyrod Taylor and a rookie can work with. I mean, it takes a weakness to a strength just like that.
And I'd say I think A.D. Mitchell is kind of a perfect complement skill set wise to Garrett Wilson too. Like they haven't really had a deep threat, red zone threat like him. Like Devontae Adams is obviously the best receiver he's played with, but Devontae's not a deep threat. He's a like win every matchup and catch every ball you throw to him kind of guy. Like Mitchell can really kind of open things up for Wilson if he plays like this, and that's why I'm. We actually do have a listener question if you want to read it. It kind of ties to this. I'm curious, like, if Garrett Wilson comes back this year and we get a little glimpse into like what that looks like.
Yeah, so I was actually going to get to you right after I was actually going to ask that literally right after you said your question here, or after you answered here. This is from Lou Garrido. What are your thoughts on how they'll approach bringing Garrett Wilson back? More cautious or wanting to see what the wide receiver group looks like when you have Garrett, AD, and Mechie? You want to answer that one first, Zach?
Yeah, I think if he's healthy, he'll come back. But, I mean, I do kind of lean towards not rushing him back because you don't want to risk further injury. But at the same time, I think Garrett, if he's healthy, is probably going to want to play. And it kind of goes into, like, the building the culture and the foundation. Like, you need your best player out there, I would say. So I would lean towards him playing at the end of the year, but I don't say that with, like, 100% confidence.
Yeah. I agree with you in that. But, like I said, you can be very encouraged, and I think, in my opinion, that's what I am at the moment with this grouping.
Yeah.
Before we move on to special teams, Zach, we're just going to take another question here because I have some interesting names I want to throw out there. Appreciate you guys everywhere you're watching, whether that's X, whether that's SNY.TV, or if that is on YouTube. The benefit of YouTube, like Lou just did here, you guys are watching throughout the duration of this show, wherever you are. If you transition over there, we have a live comment section that runs throughout the duration of this show. Brian Pincus, the producer of the show, is watching that, sending me questions as they come in from the live chat. We just talked the one about Garrett Wilson. This is the other one, is that we've fixated so much, Zach, on quarterbacks, Simpson, Mendoza, Moore, Arch, everybody. Some non-quarterback names that the Jets could target depending on where they are drafting. There's a lot that I like. I mean, I don't personally hate the idea of Caleb Downs. I know people are going to be like, oh, my God, Jamal Adams was a top-pick safety that has failed. Marcus May, when they did that. Kyle Hamilton, he's an elite-level player, is the other side of the coin of how that can work. I love the idea of Downs because I think this defense needs playmakers. And I love the idea of Aaron Glenn just trying to let his brain juices go to figure out interesting ways to use him. I love that one. I could see them going interior defensive line with Peter Woods because you're going to need guys there. Wide receiver in the first round, probably not. I don't think they'll do that. They could, but I don't think they'll invest that significant. So I think the second round pick's a little bit better. Corner as well with the Tennessee kid, Gerard McCoy. He's the one I do think that's probably atop the board for the Jets. They traded away Sauce. They're going to need to replace him, Zach, because Brandon Stevens had a hell of a game this week. I know I saw you tweet out the numbers specifically. He's looking pretty good. I still view Brandon Stevens as cornerback 2. You still need cornerback 1 to then pair with Brownlee in the nickel.
Yeah, I mean, it all kind of it's hard to project without knowing where they fall and how they feel about these quarterbacks and stuff. But like, let's say they do fall in the 7 to 9 range and they decide not to pick a quarterback there. Then you're talking about the Peter Woodses. You're talking about if you want to draft a receiver, Jordan Tyson from Arizona State. If you don't think you're gonna, I mean, I guess at that point you would know if you're bringing back Breece Hall or not. And if you're not, Jeremiah Love becomes interesting. Like the Lions drafted Jahmyr Gibbs in the top 10 or whatever it was, and that worked out pretty well. So you're kind of open to kind of doing anything because they don't have any on this roster. Like the offensive line is a strength, but you only have 3 out of 5 starters locked in for next year. Like you can make a case for drafting almost any position for this team. You just want to get it's cliche. You need to get the best player available. And whether that's defensive, I don't think a defensive tackle would excite this fan base because you just traded away Quinn and Williams, and I don't think interior defensive linemen ever like get a fan base particularly excited. But you plug Peter Woods into a group that's already pretty good on the defensive tackle group, and I think you feel pretty good about that.
Last thing we're going to talk about here, Zach, before we go into a little bit of a pick preview, is the Jets special teams. It's good. Like it's between Austin McNamara and the punter is just an absolute stud. I mean, this guy's unbelievable. Like every kick is inside the 20. Most of his kicks are inside the 10. Now he's dropping them inside the 5. The way that it spirals off of his foot, giving returners issues. The hang time, which I need the hang time clock from when my youth. Like when I was a kid, there was the hang time clock. And it would every time someone punted, it was it would start and it would stop and it would show you how long it was in the air. I loved that thing. They got to bring the hang time clock back for Mac. The guy is unbelievable. And I mean, we joke about MVP. The dude should be getting Pro Bowl, All-Pro honors. He has been that good. I don't know if he will because they just haven't won a lot of games, so he's not going to get a lot of national attention. He's been unbelievable. The returners, Isaiah Williams with the 83-yarder to set up a field goal for the Jets. Kene, we know what he can do when he's on the field. Nick Folk, just one missed field goal this year with a career long of 58 and 56. Banjo, obviously the one making it all work. There's a band joke there that I'm not going to make. I think that this special teams group has truly been spectacular for the Jets, which is a rarity because usually, Zach, when you see teams that have elite special teams units, it's a sign of great depth because you have your starters and you have players that are borderline starters playing on special teams because they're sitting behind the starters until those guys go. That's usually where you see your best special teamers. The Jets don't have studs on special teams, but they're making plays work. Stiggers is becoming an ace. I mean, it's pretty cool to see this entire thing come together for them, and it's a legitimate strength. And I think you said this yesterday, the Banjo was playing in 2023, right? He was still a player just a couple years ago.
Yeah, he retired in February 23, so he last played in 22. But that's 2.5 years ago that he was still technically a player. Which to get to be a coordinator and to have them playing this way, even Quantas Stiggers, he had that great. He recovered the muff punt, jumped on it. He said they'd been coached up all week that the Falcons returner likes to field the punts inside the 10. They're just really prepared every week, and it's kind of it's the rare case where it's kind of fun to watch the special teams unit. You never know what they're going to do. They kind of keep them in these games, and Aaron Glenn at the top deserves credit. He alluded to this. They care about the special teams. They invested in it, both in the draft and in free agency. And I think that's something that as we go to project guys they might draft or what the 53-man roster might look like in the future, I think we have to factor in how much they care about special teams. And with Banjo, he's I don't know how old he is. I think he's 35 or something like that. It's pretty hard for special teams coordinators to become head coaches, but I'd say to be starting this young and to be this successful right away, he's on the right track if he's ever going to get an opportunity, even if it just means interviews. I think he has what it takes, and I think he can captivate the room in the way that you want. And so, he's been a home run. In terms of that coaching staff, you could argue there's question marks. I think Tanner has been mostly a net positive, but I think he still has something to prove. Steve Wilkes has probably been a net negative. I think Chris Banjo has been a home run, and so that you take that win in terms of a young coach picking or a first-year coach picking out his staff.
An underrated part of this game too, Zach, and nobody's going to talk about it except for probably us. And this is so going thick in the weeds, but it stood out to me as the parallels of Austin and what a difference this caliber of a punter makes for the Jets. And I joked with Aaron Glenn after the game when I asked him about him because ultimately he hopes he never steps foot on the field. Aside from holding for extra points, he hopes this guy never's on the field. But when he is, he's such a weapon, which is, if you remember towards the end of the game, the series before the Jets winner, They got it down to like the Falcons punted it. It took a bounce, and the Jets drive started at like the 9-yard line. There was a sack. They ended up getting to the 13, but then they had to punt. They're punting from their own 13-yard line. So often, a punt from the own 13-yard line turns around and the kick goes to about the 50-yard line or the 45-yard line, and now all of a sudden, all the opposition needs is 10 yards, 15 yards, and they can try a field goal to win the game. Austin's kick went all the way to the Falcons' 33. It basically reflipped the field position when he's kicking from his own, 5-yard line? Like a 55-yard kick to the Atlanta 32-yard line. The Falcons end up going 3-and-out. So now the Falcons are punting from their 33. They end up getting it only to the Jets' 33-yard line. So it's just the way that he flipped that game from the kick to down the Falcons. The Falcons have a kick that's not that good, and then one Tyrod Taylor run and they can kick a field goal. Like, they're in field goal range to kick one. So I was wildly impressed with Austin, and just the way that he can flip field position is a weapon that the Jets thought they had when they tried to do things with Braden Mann, and then he was never really the same after that knee injury. And then kudos to him because he won a Super Bowl with the Eagles and now has become a great punter. But he struggled with injuries when he was with the Jets. Morstead was just the veteran stopgap. They found a legitimate weapon here with this kid where he can, it doesn't matter. Like he can kick from the 5-yard line, and it's not like the punt returners lining up at the 50. It just doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, to what you said earlier, I think you can make the case, and they won't get all of these guys, maybe one of them or none of them, but you can make the case that they should have a Pro Bowl kicker, punter, and returner, because Isaiah Williams, you alluded to him earlier, like the comeback he's gone on from getting cut after that Dolphins game in Week 4 to where he is now, where he's a weapon. Every time he returns the punts, they're trying to kick it away from Kene Nwangu, and he's returning kicks 83 yards on top of having a role on offense at this point. Like, those are 3 guys that have the stats and the grades and all the analytics to say that they're like 3 of the best guys at those positions. And so if their Jets are going to get any Pro Bowlers, maybe it'll be on special teams.
Love it. Love it. Hopefully. I mean, honestly, forget Pro Bowlers. They should be all pros. I mean, the returners are a little bit more challenging. Austin should be an all pro. Like, he really is that good. All right. 5 games left, Jets. 5 games left, Zach. The next one, the Dolphins. 5-7 Miami, playing much better football as of late. Fired the general manager. Mike McDaniel still has them playing pretty hard, especially considering that was a team that he looked lame duck coach status. Like, it was pretty bad. What are your thoughts? Jets right now 3-point underdogs. I like the game being played at MetLife. I actually kind of like the Jets' chances to win outright if it's crappy weather. If it's, we're so far away, there's no point looking at the forecast. But if it's cold and crappy weather, I actually think the Jets can win. If it's above 50 degrees, then I think the Dolphins probably do. But that's these games are always ugly between the Jets and Dolphins. They're always weird. Something funky always happens. I was kind of mentally preparing for facing Zach, like seeing the Jets play Zack Wilson this week. Doesn't look like we're getting that storyline. But I'm not ready to just immediately rule out the Jets' chances of winning this game outright, especially if there's crappy weather.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just looked at the weather. It's high of 41, low of 24, so it's going to be cold that day if the low's that low. So, and the Dolphins in cold weather. I think this is a very winnable game. You look at the Dolphins. I went through their stats before we get on the pod today just to get an idea of like where they're at. So they're since week 10, they have the 13th best EPA on offense, 13th best on defense, and 4th best on special teams. But if you look at the numbers, they have basically no passing game lately. Like, I think Tua has 500 combined passing yards in the last 3 games, 2 touchdowns, 3 picks. They've been really leaning on Devon Achane and Ollie Gordon.
He's really good, by the way. Achane's unreal.
He's really, really good. Yeah, and he stayed healthy too, which he had trouble with. So I'm worried about that, but Tua doesn't scare me at all. Maybe the Jets finally get their first pick of the season against him. The Dolphins defense has been really good. Like, they've really stepped up. Anthony Weaver's a pretty good coordinator. I think it's just going to be a really good game on Sunday. I think it's going to be a close one. I think it'll come down to the end. It'll probably be a game-winning field goal or something like that. And I kind of think the Jets are going to win it. Like, to your point, the weather, like the Dolphins in cold weather, the Dolphins kind of feeling themselves, 3-game winning streak. I think it'll be a good game. I don't say it with confidence that I think they'll win, but I kind of lean towards the Jets winning this game.
Yeah, the Falcon one, I felt like they were going to win that game. Like Atlanta, I was pretty confident the Jets were going to win that one. This one, I think the Jets can win. Like the one I think the Jets are going to win. This one I think there's a route to the Jets winning this game. It's not like just chalk it up. Oh, it's over. Like the Patriot game. Like, oh, they're not going to win that one. I think there's a real chance. Do want to shout out Rocco, a commenter here on YouTube. Zach, the vast majority of people that watch this show are like the female demographic in like the 21 to 28-year-old range. But it's actually pretty cool here. Rocco, 54-year-old passionate Jet fan, originally from Italy. Wow. Big fan of Joe Namath. He loves our podcast and loves listening to us. So we saw that comment come in, Rocco. We really appreciate you, man. That means so much. And we appreciate everybody who's been interacting with the show throughout the duration of it. Year 2, first year with Zach, hoping to bring it back for year 3 and maybe have a couple more wins to think about. Before we wrap this whole thing up, Zach, it's getting weird in the AFC. And this is just like a random note to this. This is completely un-Jets related. No, but just crazy. Watching football. Oh, the Bills right now are, I know they beat the Steelers, but they're kind of funky. The Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, they've had Patrick Mahomes this whole season. Doesn't matter. They're like out of the playoff picture now. They just lost. I'm looking at the playoff rankings right now. Like you have the Bears as the number one seed in the NFC. The Broncos are the number 1 seed in the AFC, and I haven't been overly impressed with the Broncos, having seen the Jets probably should have beat them, and the Giants should have beaten them. 2 teams that are 3-9 and 2-10. You got the Jaguars now in there as the 3 seed. The Rams we know are good, but it's funky, man. There is some fun. The teams that are on the outside looking in, Texans, Chiefs, like we said, the Dolphins, the Lions on the NFC side. I love the parity in the NFL, which kind of underscores how crazy it's been that the Jets haven't made it in 15 years, considering this turnover and change seems to happen year in and year out.
Well, this is the most parity I can ever remember in a single season, though. Like I can't think of a time where we were this deep in the season. You could make the case like 10 different teams to me could win the Super Bowl. Like I really do believe, like the Eagles, who look like the biggest mess in the league, you could convince me still that they win the Super Bowl at the end of the year. You could also convince me that they missed the playoffs and the Cowboys win the NFC East. Like the Cowboys, who looked like an absolute disaster 5 weeks ago. The Panthers, they just beat the Rams, who I think the Rams are, to me, still the clear-cut best team. They flew across country, had to be in Carolina. Kind of a trap game to a degree, so I'm not ready to jump off the Ram ship. I think they're legit, and I think Stafford's the MVP. Like the Patriots, they keep winning. They haven't played anybody that good, but they keep winning. Like the Bills, they do this at the end of the year a lot where they start winning. Like the AFC North is an absolute mess. Yeah. Like I don't think any of those teams are good. AFC South, the Texans all of a sudden look like maybe they're the best team in that division. Like I've just never seen anything like it. Like you could convince me the playoffs are going to be in any sort of way. The Chiefs are 2 games out of the wild card right now, with Patrick Mahomes being healthy the whole year. The NFC, the Bears have won all close games pretty much, and everybody kind of called them the worst winning team in the league. Then they go and beat the Eagles the way they did. Like I don't know. It's like I've never seen anything like it. Like it could be a year where you have a weird Super Bowl where it's something like the Broncos versus the Bears or like something like that. Like it feels like it's going to be something weird. And even the Lions aren't a lock to make the playoffs at this point. No. Like I went into the season feeling like they might be the NFC team that wins, and I don't know that I feel that anymore. So like I don't know who I would predict to make the Super Bowl right now. Maybe the Rams versus anyone in the Broncos barely beat the Commanders last night. Like that's
I think my Super Bowl pick right now, if I'm being completely honest with you, would probably be Patriots-Rams. I like the Patriots over the Broncos. I like the Patriots over the Jaguars. I like the Patriots over the Ravens because Lamar is not right. Maybe the Chargers get in, but now Herbert's dealing with the hand thing. I don't trust Daniel Jones and the Colts. And the Bills just like we are living in this world with the Bills where Josh Allen's an MVP quarterback and they're unbelievable and they've been such a good team the last 3 years. You have to forget what they've done and look at who they are. They've been bad all year. Like the Bills they've been in an offensive rut all year. They haven't been good. So like this whole, I'm not fearful of the Bills either. Where I think there's a legitimate chance for the Patriots. You talked about Matt Stafford MVP, dude. If Drake May has a legitimate chance to be an MVP in year 2, crazy. Like there is a very real path to if the Broncos slip up and the Patriots are the 1 seed in the AFC and Drake May keeps playing like he is, there's a real path to Drake May being the MVP of this league, which is wild.
Yeah, who do you think is the coach of the year? Because I think there's so many interesting cases to me.
Vrabel.
There's Vrabel, but you also but I think you look at like the 49ers. They have like what do they have 8 or 9 wins, and everybody on their team's gotten injured. Like I think there's some. I think Vrabel probably be my vote, but like there's like it's the parody has made it so, like, I don't know if the Cowboys fight their way back to the playoffs, is Brian Schottenheimer getting votes? Like, I don't know. Like,
that would be that's my sneaky team, is that the Cowboys get in. I think there's a real chance they can make a run. The Cowboys are playing. I mean, their offense is unbelievable, and their defense now with Quinnen and the kid they got from the Bengals, the linebacker, they're playing really good ball now too. Where that's a team where if they can sneak in, I actually like them more than the Rams, to be completely honest. Like, if the Cowboys can find a way to get into the playoffs, I think there's a chance they actually go to the Super Bowl and you have a Patriots-Cowboys Super Bowl, which would be absolutely absurd. My vote goes to Vrabel, though, man, just because you had a team that they were 4-13 last year, last place in the AFC East, and now you're talking about them being the 1 seed. Like, a coach really does make all the difference. So that's coach and quarterback, man. You don't, and it's the fact that the Patriots might have just found the league MVP in May and have Vrabel now for the next 15 years. God, the Jets don't get any luck. All right, that is going to do it for this episode of Jets Final Drive. We thank you guys so much for joining us. I'm going to be back later this week with Janae Coakley on Jets Mailbag. You can start sending your questions to me and Janae both on X or on SNY Jets videos on X. We'll take all your questions and we'll answer them in the show later on this week. Zach is going to be back on Jets Flight Plan, part of the Badlands group there with Tim McMaster, so keep a look for that podcast breaking down everything that is going on with the Jets. Make sure that wherever you are watching us, if it's X, we love you, SNY.TV, hell yeah, page views, but we stress and we point you to the SNY YouTube channel time and time again, because that is the home for all of SNY's digital content, where you're watching us, so we know you like the Jets, which means you're also going to like Jets pre- and post-game live. The group and guys over there do an incredible job. You'll get the mailbag show like we talk about, but also the Knicks who are making a run. Ian Begley's putback is awesome. All of our stuff from Honda Sports Night, random little clips that come up, interviews, access, highlights, all that stuff. So make sure you subscribe to SNY's digital channel. All right, so for Zach, I am Connor. A huge thank you to our production staff of Brian Pincus, Sam Candle, Corey Palmer, and executive producer Jets Coleman. This has been Jets Final Drive. 3-2 Jets in their last 5. Win, 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 win. They keep winning. We'll see if it continues next week against the Miami Dolphins. Unlike all the other episodes, I think it might.